all of the options through that lens of the goals that I mentioned earlier. However we can raise the capital to meet the needs of the airport authority is what we're here to do. So I'm happy to take any questions on that aspect.
Trustee Cunningham.
Thank you. I'm curious with the estimated 37.7 million and 27 before you buy a desk. That seems so expensive. Can you give me an idea what that's based on? Is it number of offices, space that's needed? Would it be less expensive or a standalone? It just seems outrageous.
Those are all very good questions. We were looking at the cost in comparison to the market rates for commercial office building, and we felt that they were within the ballpark of what commercial office space would cost in the Reno-Sparks area. So we were okay with that. It's just the project delivery method being used of design build on a private development presented more of a challenge than we expected to be able to pay for our share of that headquarters. And yes, we are looking at alternative sites. I cannot tell you, though, here today whether or not those alternative sites are going to be more or less. I can say that alternative sites will offer benefits to the authority to where we will be in a position to control our own destiny if it's on airport property and if it's an airport public works typical type project. We know how to do those type of projects. It could be a question of bandwidth for the staff, and that's something that we're also addressing. But we'll have to get into some of those assumptions of cost for the alternative sites when we have that information available.
It sounded like a good idea, but obviously once you look into it, there are a lot of other considerations. That's too bad. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Just a quick
I have a
question.
quick question.
Hold on, Trustee Giannoli's going to go, then you next.
Yep. Great, thank you.
When are we going to be at a point when the rubber's going to meet the road and we're going to have to say we're going to go right or left on this? Are we getting, I mean, Darren, you and I chatted a bit about that, but just curious.
Madam Chair.
Of course.
Good question. And we reached that point, and we basically informed Conrac Solutions, I think on Friday, that we weren't going to continue to pursue this with them. The real paradigm shift here was, for the first time in this process, real clarity from the rental cars that they wanted what you call a distributed customer service building, which is, many of us are used to walking into a rental car center and you got all the counters and you get in line, and they really want to move away from that model, that you have what you need in your phone. It'll wayfind you to the parking garage level that your brand is on, and you go to row 3 and pick a car out, right? You don't really need to interface with people anymore. And so when they got clarity on that, it really eliminated the co-location opportunity here for us to be, basically above them that you see in some other airports. And it got to be a pretty simple conversation after that. There was one other concept that they were, presenting to us that just wasn't really going to meet our needs for the kind of HQ facility that we think we're going to want for this organization. So we debriefed. It was going to be a complicated business deal anyways, as Randy has described, but if it had been a concept that really got you excited, well, we can work through complicated things, but we don't have that anymore. So I'm excited that we've landed on the alternative that you basically saw here, the baseline alternative, which includes the ground transportation center. They're making good progress, as you can see already, and kind of filling in the site plan details. We haven't really got into design yet. That will come next. That will come before the May board meeting. Will be an augmentation for this project budget for them to move now to 60% design. It won't include any form of an HQ. So that's back on us. We're working on what that might look like and where it might be. We still need to solve for our own space needs, but we don't need to complicate an already really complicated rental car project if there isn't a really great winning concept there where you're going to get a true win-win out of it. So we kind of lost that opportunity, but This has been a great exercise in understanding how complicated the financing can be, how complicated it is to work with a P3 with our own borrowing restrictions as a public entity. So we had a lot of great effort here that I think will serve us well when we consider financing, self-financing a headquarters facility somewhere else on our campus. So the purpose of this presentation today was really kind of give you that progress report on how the site plan is coming for the Ground Transportation Center in Conrack and where we've landed on the HQ. There won't be really any more conversations. I think we can talk about it at the retreat if we want to. But 30 days ago, I probably would have told you I felt like there was going to be a winning concept in here and we might go with something, but you got to run these processes all the way through, stay open-minded all the way through, and if it's meant to be, it will be, and it's not. So that's okay. Long answer to a
Just a quick follow-up. As you said, I think it was a great learning experience probably, and you probably saw other avenues that maybe will pertain to different things we do in the future. So, but you certainly took it to the, the end of the road and got the answer, and now you move on. So,
Okay, yep.
Yep, appreciate that. Thank you.
Trustee Jay?
Thanks very much. Trustee Ginola kind of asked my questions. So just, great explanation, Darren. I totally understand. Just on kind of on a side note, great question from Trustee Cunningham. I'm in the process of, we're building out, my team we're moving into a new Wells Fargo advisors office just a block down. And I was surprised to see what the costs are just for a little 12 office suite is. Prices are just crazy these days, but it's the environment that we live in. And I feel comfortable with, whatever methodology that we're using, that it's going to be the best pricing. But, prices are just crazy out there. I was just looking at the bid for rewiring stuff for Wi-Fi and fiber optics and everything else, and it just kind of floored me. But it's the environment we live in, I guess, right now. But great presentation. Thank you.
One quick question on just the change in the design. So for people who, believe it or not, some people actually don't have a smartphone, what will their options be? Will it still be easy for them to find their way through the system without a phone?
Great question. There will still be the traditional rental car counters for each of the brands. They'll just be slightly downsized. So they should be able to.
But people
to do
can
the
just
check-in.
walk up and do what
Absolutely.
they normally
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. Yeah, just a little bit smaller.
Perfect.
So I do have a few more slides just to kind of run you through the next steps where we head from here. All right, so as a reminder, we are still in phase 2, which is design, development, and pricing for the project. So by the end of phase 2, we hope to have enough information to convince you to move forward to phase 3 of the project so we can get this thing built. So we'll have 60% design. We'll finalize all of our site considerations, any of the facilities that we need to either demolish or relocate or rebuild. We'll go through the NEPA process, which I will get into a little bit on the next slide. And then Conrack Solutions, along with Austin Commercial, will provide us with a not-to-exceed fixed price for the project. That will help inform where the CFC rate needs to be. And then finally, my department will be working on several leases, the largest of which is the ground lease with Conrack Solutions. But we'll also need to do concessions agreements with all the rental car operators and permits with all of the ground transportation. So the FAA process, essentially where you start here is you submit what's called a Section 163 letter. And what that is the start of the NEPA process. The airport submits a letter that says, we think that since this project doesn't have any aeronautical impacts on the airport, that the FAA shouldn't really be involved. So the area outlined in blue is the area that we've elected to include in the study. You'll see the Conrack ground transportation area there in orange. And that area is a little bit bigger because the areas in blue are potential areas that we will need to relocate some of the displaced facilities. Just a note, while the pro-collision building there on the corner is included in the study, we do not intend to disrupt their operation at this time. So the FAA expects to take approximately 90 to 120 days after we submit our letter. We do intend to submit the letter by the end of this month, hopefully earlier if everything goes as planned. And then worst case scenario, if they don't agree with our position that this shouldn't be subject to further federal environmental processes, we will have to potentially undergo one of those processes, which could take in the neighborhood of 6 to 18 months. So we are really trying to cross our T's and dot our I's here and get this project submitted, or this letter submitted, so that we get it right the first time. And we have hired an environmental lawyer to help us draft that letter. Another piece we're working on here, we do need to do some exhibits or updates to the option agreement, which will include just finalizing what the site's going to look like, all the different operations that will be included in it, finalize that list of site considerations, work out the schedule and the budget augmentation that CEO Griffin mentioned earlier. And this is the slide I'm sure you've all been waiting for. This is what we're going to be asking from you next month. As a reminder, the Phase 2 budget that was previously approved by the board was $9.67 million, and that's all being funded by CFCs. We do currently have $16 million in the CFC account available to fund the project. That was one of the kind of side benefits of the landside study pauses. We were really able to bump the bank account up. So our ask at the board next month will be right around $1.75 million. The bulk of that comes from the new site. So they didn't have to completely restart the design work, but they had to rework quite a bit of it. And so 1.5 million of the 1.75 million will be towards that. Conrac Solutions and PGAL, the design firm, also did provide quite a bit of help during the landside study, so we need to budget a little bit for that. 100,000 for increased legal expenses, and then the 20,000 for the environmental consultant that I mentioned earlier. And then we also noticed, this is very minor, but we noticed that we didn't include anything for printing drawings or anything like that, so we threw in a little bit there so we wouldn't exceed our budget. Final note is we do, with the new budget, the 2022-2023 budget that you'll be looking at, I believe this week, and then voting on next month, we will be increasing the CFC from $550 per transaction day to $650. And kind of a look ahead of where we plan to go from here. May will be bringing you the budget augmentation ask, and then we have a couple design reviews by the end of the year, and all else goes to plan. We'll be back here in just over a year where you'll vote to move to Phase 3 and we'll get this thing built. And my presentation, happy to answer any questions you may have.
Does anybody have additional questions? Trustee Jay, do you have any additional questions?
No, all looks exciting. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you for the presentation. Appreciate it. Thank you, Randy, as well. .2 is a presentation on public parking and ground transportation rates. And the presenter is Brandon, and I'm not even going to try it.
Give it a go. Give it a go.
Micolete.
Close?
Micolette.
Hey.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's right.
Yes,
You
okay.
got it. You got it. All right. Good morning. For the record, my name is Brandon Micolite, supervisor in the Landside Operations Department. So today we're going to look at our public parking rates and ground transportation fees. We had the opportunity when looking at the master fee resolution and reevaluating our fees as a department. Are we where we need to be comparably to airports and based on our area? So we went back and looked. We haven't updated our parking fees in over 12 years, and we haven't adjusted our GT rates in 18 years. So it's about that time. When we adjust these fees or look to increase them, it's paramount to do so to be able to fund these projects. When we look at the operations buildings, landside parking lots, we want to make sure that we're being fiscally responsible and ensuring that we're funding these. And being at industry standards is very important as well. So how do you do that? Well, you find someone who knows what they're talking about. So we went out and we consulted with Walker Consultants. They are the pretty much gold standard in this area. It's a very specialized industry. They are well-renowned. They've done over 325 different studies. They're a pretty large airport company, and our particular project was assigned to Christina Jones and Andrew Vidor. Again, it's something that they do, and they do well. They've done hundreds of studies with different cities, other parking lots, airports, universities. So we trusted in them and to help us move forward through this process. So their two primary goals were to identify our policies and practices and look at the strategies that we can do to move forward to increase our parking rates and our GT rates. So they took two different approaches to evaluate these metrics. One being basically our trips, historical trick data, our revenue, and our demand. We don't want to stifle demand in any way by raising them too high, and we really wanted to make sure that they really wanted to make sure that they're looking at what we've done in the past and where we're going in the future. The next step was to look at our peer airports and previously published papers on the matter as well. Here they compared us to Nashville, Raleigh-Durham, Sacramento, Tucson, just to name a few. So let's start with our parking rates. So when we look at parking rates, our parking facilities as they stand today, we do have three traditional lots: our surface lot, short-term garage, and the long-term garage. Here we'll see our historical rates. Really haven't seen a lot of movement over the last 20 plus years. Where we are today was established in August of '09. So again, it's been a long time. So Walker provided us with a few different suggestions and options based on their criteria, and we took that back as a team and worked on it and found a solution that we felt was best for the airport and our customers. I'm sorry if I missed this one here. This is basically how the hour rates are broken down here, just to give a little insight on that. So like I said, we went back and we looked at our rates and went with what we thought was the best suggestion and what we're going to move forward here. Basically what you'll see is we raised each of the lots by $2 across the board. Really easy to read, really easy to digest. So we're going from 24 to 26, 14 to 16, and then 10 to 12. Hourly rates are a little different. We went ahead and broke that down just a little bit more on that first hour. We wanted to make sure we're capturing those smaller segments of that first hour and then that additional hour. About 50% of our transactions, a little under 50% of our transactions are within that first 2 hours. So that's where a bulk of those transactions come from. So we want to make sure we're using that to capture the most revenue. So you'll see that it's broken down $1 for the first 20 minutes, $2 for 20 to 40, $3 for the first hour, and then an additional $2 for every hour after that. So basically it comes out to an additional $1 for the first hour, an additional $1 for every additional hour is what the increase you'll see there. Do you have any questions on this here?
I have a quick question. I'm so surprised that we're looking at this point. Is there not an annual review, or what was happening in the last 18 years?
I wasn't here. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I mean, I think it's a really good idea and long overdue, but is there not something already?
So this started back in actually 2018. Ben Carpenter was tasked at the time to look at the rates and start this study. And the pandemic hit. So we were right in the middle of preparing to come to the board to introduce these rates. And then when the pandemic happened, we didn't feel it was appropriate at that time to look at increasing rates. The optics just wouldn't be there. But took a few years, but we're here now.
And is do you need board approval to make these changes, or you're just informing us?
We will, during the
At the
budget
bu-
process, there'll be a master fee resolution that the board will approve that addresses all of our rates and fees, but parking is always especially interesting.
It is, very, thank you.
Are these hourly rates only for short-term lots, or if short-term lot is full and people park in long-term lots, do we actually have hourly rates? We
That's
do?
correct, yes. So our hourly rates pertain to all of our lots. And that way, again, just as you mentioned, if something were to happen in our short-term fills, which it generally does on those busy peak times, then we want to ensure we're not going to take
for a full day.
take advantage of our customers.
Gotcha.
Correct.
Great, thank you.
No problem.
Got a question, if I could?
Good.
Trustee Jay, please.
Thank you. Again, great comment by Trustee Cunningham. I agree, we sat too long, and I'm kind of thinking about the hangar rent study that we did a couple of years ago, where we didn't have a real good methodology for how we were going to raise rates, when we were going to raise rates, and what method we were going to use. And I'm wondering, with that, should we task that every year, every 18 months, whatever parameters we look at? Do we have something set in stone that says we're going to review our parking lot fees to make sure they're adequate? Doesn't mean we have to act on it, but it just kind of prompts something for us to review these to make sure we're competitive with the community as well as all other airports.
We don't have anything currently where we're actively looking at our parking rates. It is something as part of the master fee resolution that we do review, but we can definitely go back as a team and put a policy in place to ensure we're doing that.
And I would just add
I
to
think it'd
that.
just be prudent, yeah. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Darren.
Thank you. I think it occurs on an annual basis when we review the master fee resolution, and you'll see this year we recommended a number of rate increases. As a matter of policy, we hold our rates frozen across the board, I think, since the beginning of the pandemic, knowing that we had done the Walker parking study and that we were pretty much late in making an adjustment from 2009 to 2019. I don't know what the process was in there, but I would say most airports likely increased rates at some point during that process, although coming out of the Great Recession, there was again a lot of pressure not to make things more expensive than they already were. But with the growth in air travel that occurred, it's a little surprising there wasn't a rate increase. And then, as Brandon said, along came the pandemic. I say, we're going to be looking at this annually, especially with our landside development capital program. Revenue generation is critical to fund the improvements that we need to make. And so it's a delicate balance between not taking advantage of customers, as there is no off-site airport competition in this market. So we have to be sensitive to that, but we also need to pay its own bills. So delicate balance there.
Just out of curiosity, how does the difference in our short-term to long-term, like $10 per day, is that normal for most airports?
It really depends. It's really the location is what you're basing the rates on. So the short term is designed to provide an area for people to park who are here for pickup, drop off, or maybe for a short day trip is what that is there for. And then the additional lots are for those long-term travelers. Alrighty, so what does that mean for revenue? So that is the important piece. So right now, a year to date, our parking revenue per passenger is $6.33. And we anticipate an increase to $6.87 per passenger with this increase, which is about 54 cents. Employments at the beginning of the year, as you know, is 1.5 million. I believe it was adjusted to a little over 2 million at the mid-year. And then the fiscal year employments are 2.36 for this coming up year. That's important when looking at these budget revenues, because that's really gonna, it's really gonna tell us where that revenue should be based on those employments. That there's that direct correlation on parking. And so we want to keep that in mind when looking at these rates, and where that big jump that you're going to see here with the parking revenue for this year was set at $8.2 million, and we anticipate next fiscal year to be at 15.6. That sounds like a really, really big jump. Again, just keeping in mind that the 8.2 was budgeted right as we were coming out of that pandemic. So the increase that we've seen over this year, it's not accounted for in this number. As a note, we already beat that number. As of the end of March, we're at 9.7 million revenue for the parking. So we anticipate somewhere around the 12 million mark by the end of the year. So when we look at that 15.6 million, makes a little bit more sense as far as that slight increase over the next fiscal year. Any questions on that?
Trustee Jay, did you have another question? I just saw your message.
No, but just, it's kind of nothing really related, and I was way too in, but let's go ahead and do it now. I just wanted to shout out, Brendan, thank you for taking my call a couple weeks ago over that question I had, and your quick response to my question. And, I just want to say thank you. You were right on top of it, and I was very pleased to hear how we're handling that situation. So thank you. And you can elaborate if you want. It's up to you.
No problem, anytime. That's what I'm here for.
Trustee Cunningham also has a question.
To be honest, I think it's a very conservative increase, and that there might be room for more. How does it compare to other airports that you guys, looked at?
It's comparable. Currently, again, we just wanted to keep in mind that the optics of having a huge jump, and again, going back to the point of Darren, that we'll revisit this annually. We still have this study that there was more aggressive options that we can definitely phase in. Again, we just don't want to put off, again, we don't think this is gonna affect demand at all in the slightest, but we also don't want the optics to be that the airport is draining its customers for every penny. So we wanna make sure that we're doing what's best for the customers and for the airport.
Fair enough. Sounds good.
I would agree that that's kind of a good approach, particularly when you're going to look at them. You're not going to wait 10 years. So to take we're still, people are still coming out of this, and all we hear is today more news about the inflation and that we're at the high again, and you don't want to be in those optics, I don't think.
Absolutely.
Great comment. It's not the most aggressive move we can make, but it's a good step in the right direction, and gives us time to get better clarity on what are the landside infrastructure costs that we are seeing we're going to have to fund, because an important part of this is what are we doing with this revenue, right? We're reinvesting in our own infrastructure. We've had to increase the size of Brandon's staff to manage the parking demand that is around the clock at this point. So we're pouring money back into the operation and trying to also save money for the big investments that are coming. It won't affect demand whatsoever. You'd have to make a huge price increase at this point to affect demand. So that's not part of the goal. It's to help, it needs to fund its own needs, and that really is the point of it. So we will continue to evaluate, and if it makes sense to make an additional adjustment based on what's happening at other airports and what our needs are, we will certainly be back to do that, for sure.
Hopefully, we'll remind the general public that we haven't done this for 18 years.
Lead with that, I think.
Lead with that.
So if there's no other questions on the actual parking rates, we'll move on to the ground transportation rates. So again, looking at these rates based on the recommendations from Walker, they looked at the parking rates and the ground transportation rates. Again, 18 years for these rates, you'll see here where the actual ground transportation is. If you actually haven't gone out there and looked at it, that's how it's currently in its current iteration set up. Obviously, with the CONRAC, that's going to change, but just to give you a little on look of how the ground transportation is configured. So when we look at our rates, they are as followed with the $25 permitting fee for a non-permitted bus. And then going down the list, buses are $3, shuttles $1.50, paid limousines $1.50, so on and so forth. If you look at these numbers, they are very, very low compared to the market and compared to other comparable airports. Again, 18 years, and you expect that. So we went back, again, thinking of what are our needs financially and ensuring that we don't stifle that demand, especially in that area. So our suggestions are going to be to raise our bus fee by $2, making it $5. The shuttles to $3. The paid limos to $3. The courtesy vehicles to $3. Taxis to $2, and ground TNCs to $2. So it's a pretty smooth increase across the board there. One note on the TNCs, your Uber and Lyfts, is this is going to be a staged, staggered plan to get them to where we actually want them to be. So even $2 is really low for the market. So there's a 3-year plan that we have in place that we'll move toward over the next 3 years, and we'll talk to the Uber and Lyft, inform them of that plan, so that way we're transparent. So that would include charging them for drop-offs and an additional rate increase after that.
Any chance you know which of these is our largest revenue source?
The largest, the single largest would be your TNCs, your Uber and Lyft, as it currently sits. If we're looking at combined, then your shuttle, all the others kind of combined together a little bit, but really that single source would be your TNCs.
The TNC is a higher revenue than the taxi at this point.
It's since 2018, correct.
Thank you.
Question. Where in the structure if the peer-to-peer gets more robust, will that fit?
For the TNCs,
TNCs?
yeah. So the other categories where we set them now will be pretty much at that peer-to-peer industry standard. The TNC, we really want to phase that in because it's going to be a big change for them in this market. And so we decided to stagger that in over a 3-year plan. So it'll be $1 this year. Next year, you'll see a drop-off fee added on, and then the following year, an additional $1 on top.
Just as a sidebar, I just got notified that they're doing a regulatory hearing on the peer-to-peer regulations at the state. I think it's coming up in the next week or so. So I don't know how that, if that's going to impact anything.
And may I ask, what makes up courtesy vehicle? What is that?
That's a good question. So a courtesy vehicle is a company who provides a service at free to charge to the customer. So that would include usually you're looking at like resorts, hotels, are your main courtesy vehicle provider there. Questions here? Alrighty. Moving forward, again, Walker looked at policy. One of the policies that we have are options that the GT providers can take is what we have is called a flat rate option, which allows them to pay a flat rate of $800 per month, regardless of the amount of trips that they make. So that generally looks like your hotels and your really frequent providers. Walker looked, and we agreed that this doesn't provide much benefit to the airport, as they are still providing that wear and tear and usage in that lot. They far outseed this in trips. So our recommendation is to discontinue that option, but we didn't want to leave them high and dry. So we came up with with an additional option called scheduled shuttle. And basically this requirement would require them to operate 16 times a day, which would shake out to about 490 trips a month, which for them, they're averaging about 1,200 trips. So well within their scope. And they'll have to provide the airport with a set schedule annually on when they'll be at the airport. With that, we'll provide them a discount at $2 per trip instead of the full $3 per trip for them. What does that look for revenue? So the first column you see there will be our estimated revenue at the end of the year for each of our categories. You'll see that it's totaling about $275,000. On the next category you'll see is the estimated increase. These are taking 1-for-1 trips and including, and again, that scheduled shuttled and taking away that flat fee option, which is why you see that big increase on that shuttles and buses line item. So we're estimating about a $300,000 increase, which is almost about double of what we're currently doing in that lot, which we believe was a fair and balanced approach to this. Timeline. So what does that look like for us? So what we will do is after the May board, which you'll see these changes in the master fee resolution. Upon your approval, we'll notify the GT providers during the permitting process, which does start in May, letting them know of the changes before July 1st. In June, we'll be, in conjunction with PR and marketing, start rolling out the public parking rate increases. We want to make sure that it's a smooth process with the public, that we don't receive any pushback, and we can help them understand where we're coming from. And again, 12 years will be mentioned. And these new rates, we're planning on going into effect on July 1st. And that's all I have. If you have any questions. This July 1st,
Do we have any questions?
More money.
Trustee Jay? Trustee Jay, do you have any questions? Oh, we lost-
I hit unmute. Very good presentation. It's, I think it's something that we need to move forward with. No doubt about it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all the information.
Thank you.
It's exciting. Item number 5.1, Board Memo 04-2022-20, approval to award a 5-year contract for janitorial services for the main terminal buildings at Reno Tahoe International Airport and the Reno Stead Airport with one-call maintenance and janitorial service in the amount of $2,002,668 and the ever necessary 7 cents. And we have Mr. Pittman to give us a presentation. Welcome.
Good morning, Chair Rose, trustees, Ms. Morgan, and Mr. Griffin. As stated, this is for the next 5-year contract for the custodial contract to take care of our professional carpet care in our public spaces, as well as the heavy cleaning and sanitizing of our public restrooms. As you can see, it's quite a scope of services for this contract. They're going to be taking care of 113,000 square foot of carpet throughout the area for the upper level public areas and downstairs for the restrooms. Monthly extraction carpet cleaning. They've got to turn that carpet over once a month, so it's quite a bit of work. They'll also be taking care of the carpet on our passenger boarding bridges. They also take care of the security checkpoint, connector concourse, BNC concourses, the lobby gaming area that you see downstairs. What you don't see on this is also the TSA's third level screening areas. There's 2 of them, as well as the on-screen resolution room where they do the baggage screening. That was bestowed upon us by the TSA when they decided they weren't going to fund the cleaning of those areas anymore. So we had to do a change order contract, and now we've got it in this new contract. They are going to be taking care of the detailing, heavy cleaning, sanitizing of those restrooms. Like I say, very important, especially with what we've gone through for these past couple of years. They're also going to be taking care of 5,800 square foot of high reach glass that we've got out there for the new connector, the gateway area that we call it. They only do the exterior side of it. The tenants are responsible for the inside of the area, and it does take specialized equipment to do that work. So we put out an RFP, as we always do for this contract, and we advertise it in the Reno Gazette-Journal as required by NRS statutes on February 11th. We also posted it on our website like we do everything else, you know, with requested bids, qualifications, proposals. And then we also put it on the NGEM site That has been a great tool for us. It gets a lot of exposure. And with this, we had 1,171 people that this was sent to. There were 28 firms that reviewed these documents, and out of that, we had 11 firms that attended the mandatory pre-proposal meeting. And out of that, we had 6 companies that actually submitted proposals to the airport. All proposals were deemed responsive and responsible. We put together a panel to review this RFP process, and that was primarily consisted of our building maintenance team that oversees and manages this contract. Building superintendent, the supervisor.
Mr. Pittman, please talk into the microphone closer, please.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Here we go. So some of the proposal evaluation criteria that we scored them on was their qualifications, of course. How long they've been in business, adherence to the specifications, how well they paid attention to that when they put their proposal together. Really important is their staffing plan and their management team of how they are going to go about getting this work all done. A detailed organizational work plan, we'd like to see that, as well as how they're going to be able to take care of everything, how many people they're going to be putting on site every day. That's very important. Approach to meeting this performance-based contract program that we've got. Like I said, this is performance-based. If they do not meet certain requirements, they are hit on their monthly invoice for not being able to, to complete that work. And we also looked at the contract pricing, of course. So this is what we came up with the proposals that were submitted from the 6 different firms. You can see there's quite a bit of range there between the high and low, a little bit over $800,000. And so coming with that, we go through and we start and we look at everything, the entire proposal, every one of them. Then we go back and we start looking at the pricing to see where they fall, and then we go from there. The committee was unanimous in selecting One Call Maintenance and Janitorial Service. They provided a very good, solid, and detailed program and work plan. They also let us know how many people they're going to have here. They've already got 14 people that are badged and work at this airport and have. Their proposal was very well prepared. I was really pleased to see what they had put together. They have excellent job references, as you'll see on this next slide. One Call was the only local firm that submitted a response from the Truckee area. We had one other firm from Nevada, and they were down in Clark County. Excellent performance for the RTAA for the last 5 years. And although not required, they showed us what their bank statements were just to show how solvent and how responsible they were with their finances. They are a disadvantaged business enterprise. And just a little bit about Oscar and his company. They're based here in Reno. Been in business for 27 years, starting in 1995. And they've worked for just about every airline here at the airport, I think with the exception of the new ones that we have here now. American Airlines, 20 years, United Airlines, 22 years. And as you can see the list, they've been around this airport for quite a while. They've never been penalized on their invoices. And I must say the previous 2 contractors that we've had, it was a monthly ordeal. So they've done it. We have requested a budget for the next year that you're going to be seeing here this next month. For the Reno budget here at this airport, we put in $350,000 for the budget to take care of this contract, $30,000 up at Stead. It's pretty much the same scope of services up at Stead that they do here, just on a smaller scale. They've got 6 restrooms in that new terminal up there, some carpet. They do some glass cleaning and dusting and trash. And so as you can see with this right here, it kind of gives you a breakdown of what the costs are for Reno for the next 5 years, as well as Reno Stead for the next 5 years, and that annual total, bringing us to $2,002,688.07. Therefore, it brings us to our recommendation to the board to move to authorize the president and CEO to award a 5-year contract for janitorial services for the main terminal building at Reno Tahoe and the Reno Stead Airport with One Call Maintenance and Janitorial Service in the amount of $2,002,688.07. That concludes my presentation. Should you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them for you.
there any chance you remember who had the contract before WOW?
ABM,
Okay.
very large company. Yes, they were.
And they didn't bid?
No, they did not. And they didn't bid last time either. They showed up at the last time we did this proposal, but they did not submit.
Interesting. Does anyone have any questions? Go ahead.
Chair Rose, I've got a quick question.
Okay, Trustee
I
Jay.
noticed there was, thank you. I noticed there was an $800,000 difference between low and what was picked. And, you know, it's not always best price to go with the lowest one, but why such a big difference? What did you find in your analysis?
Well, for the most part, the ones that were really high, there were two that were what I consider to be astronomical. But then again, they are very large corporations with hundreds of employees. One had 2,200 employees. So they have a lot of overhead that they've got to cover. They've also got to reestablish themselves here in Reno because they're not here. And so that's kind of what we looked at. We looked at the size of the scope of the airports they were at. There were only 3 that actually had any airport experience. The other 3 did not. And that was key to what we were looking at here. It's definitely a different type of operation. They've got a very limited hour to work, anywhere from, from 10 o'clock to 4 in the morning. So they've got a lot of work to get done in a very short amount of time.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Sure.
So what was the primary difference between the lowest bidder?
Well, the lowest bidder, they did not have a local office. They didn't even state how they were going to cover that. And I can go through, I've got a lengthy list of each one of them.
It's okay. I was just, it was just sheer curiosity
Yeah.
because the price is so great, but
Yes.
um,
And
I love your choice. I was
Yeah.
just curious.
Well, we had a concern too because I don't think a lot of these companies from the outside really know what the impact and what we've been dealing with here in Reno with the the economy here and in the labor market. So
That's true. The labor market has changed, and we're known for our cleanliness here, and we don't want to compromise that.
that is correct.
Trustee Cunningham.
Thank you. Boy, they do sound like the best, most qualified choice, so I'm really happy about that. Are there ever any times in my past RFP didn't broaden the scope enough to go with qualified? It was simply price point. So this is a little different for me. Is there ever a time when you have to adhere to the price, or it's the most qualified?
It's
Well,
affordable and
if I
responsible.
may, that would be more for a request for bid when you go for the low price. But I've also got Holly Luna here, our purchasing manager, that can kind of address some of that as well.
That's okay. I was just
Yeah.
curious. And with the periodic reviews and what's it called? Periodic reviews for performance. Is that a formal review, or just your team just kind of periodically goes through and keeps an eye on things?
We have a sheet that we check every night. We go through that with their lead foreman, supervisor, whoever it is at night. And so there's a checklist that has to be done. So it's not done just quarterly, monthly. It's done every night to make sure that they're taking care of our terminal per the contract.
That's impressive.
Yes.
And it makes me pleased that we can also award the bid to a local company and the minority, I think it was. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great.
One quick question or comment. You also have to have, all these people have to have some kind of security check to be in the airport, don't they?
Yes,
So
they do.
that adds a layer to the labor shortage and the fact that these folks already have a staff that is cleared and
That is a good point. Yes, they do have to go through the normal background check like everybody else does to get this badge to be able to work in the secure area of the airport. And that is a challenge for a lot of companies nowadays.
Darren.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Trustee Cunningham, good question. I think I ran down this rabbit hole a bit, as my staff will recall, when we did the dry run on this. It's not a traditional low bid contract, kind of like when we're selecting engineering services or something. Their price proposal is one of the factors that gets scored between the agencies, but also abilities, DBE, a bunch of different criteria in there like Dave walked through. So that, well, it's important because you're looking at, wow, $800,000 is a big number. I think I asked you, and another thing that you mentioned, Dave, was that they're also, their idea of quantities can be different from what we're looking for in terms of that didn't get us as many restroom cleanings as we might have felt we wanted. And so it brings the price in lower, but it's not actually what we need because they don't understand the environment well enough. So a number of different factors there, and we kind of got a double check on making sure, you know, we're clear on our ability to do this. So it's a professional contract, and it is awarded as such, not just based on price, but it gets your attention.
That explains it,
Yeah.
professional services completely.
Well, and wouldn't it be true to say that, you know, after the experience with WOW, I mean, you know, they came in at a low price, but then they couldn't really honor their contract. And so a lot of this, for this particular one, is to make sure that they actually bid enough to do what needs to be done.
Yes, that is correct. And in the RFP, and we have a table that they have to fill out, and how many labor hours it takes to do each part of that scope of service, from cleaning a restroom to scrubbing a floor, how long it takes to extract the carpet. That entire scope has got a table set up that they have to provide how many hours that it takes to do that. So we analyze that. Then it's also correlated with how much it costs to do that service. So we have a good idea of how much time they're actually putting into it. It gives us an idea of what their, you know, what their net profit is, how much they may be paying their staff. So we look at that very close. This has been in place for 2005. Since 2005, we've been doing this contract. So we look at that very closely. It gives us a good idea because we know how long it takes to do these kind of things. So
Very detailed, very impressive.
thank you.
If there are not any other questions, we can entertain a motion.
If you go back to the other slide, I'm happy to make the motion. I would like to move to authorize the president CEO to award a 5-year contract for janitorial services for the main terminal building at the Reno Tahoe International Airport and the Reno Stead Airport with one call maintenance and janitorial service in the amount of $2,002,688.07.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Pittman.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
That brings us to item number 6, member comments, questions, and requests for agenda items. Do we have any comments or questions? Trustee Jay?
I'm good on my end. Thank you. Great presentations by everybody.
Thank you. Item number 7, monthly administrative reports. Does anybody have any questions or comments or need additional information on items 7.1 through 7.3? Public comment.
No public comment.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you for the presentations. This meeting is hereby adjourned. And Trustee Sperber, would you like to give an update on your meeting?
Yeah, give us 10 minutes, so 20 after. I know we want to get going on this. Got a little something at 11:30. So, yeah, if we could go. I see our first item, the list is here, so 10 minutes, so 20 after.
At 10:20, the construction committee meeting will start.